Tell our listeners a little bit about after the DPS, you started a business and became an entrepreneur. How did that go?
So if you could remember a few minutes ago, we talked about the portfolio I had in my State Department job, where I was using drug money to buy assets for our partners.
Yeah.
In the course of that, which preceded DPS by 5 years, I could never I went up to Silicon Valley and I met with this professor, the associate dean of aerospace engineering at Stanford. And in this small warehouse outside of Stanford, he had incubated this really unique drone. And it was a ducted fan, think of a helicopter without rotary blades. And I remember looking at that thinking, man, this would solve a lot of mission gap problems that I had as a Marine. It would solve a lot of problems I have at sea down in South America.
Yeah.
And it would have solved a lot of problems on the border with Texas. Instead of building a border wall, we could build a virtual network of these systems that could launch and recover on, using AI. And I was just fascinated with that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've noticed. Like reading, I read about a lot of entrepreneurs. Is a lot of times starting a business or being an entrepreneur is just about identifying gaps in the market that need to be filled. And so you because you had worked in this market, you knew where the gaps were, essentially. Yeah.
Well, I knew, and this is true across any industry, is that you identify what the problem is. It might be really nichey, but the client feedback means a lot more than what you think they need. It's what they actually need versus what your perception of the need is.
Yeah.
And so I knew that this drone, because I was that end user at one time.
You were the client. Yeah, you were the client.
I was the client. And so I knew that if I ever had an opportunity to get out of government service, which was never my intention to be a career guy, I was going to go back out to Stanford and I was going to sit down with this guy and try to get him to sell me this IP, this design, this aircraft, this small team of 2 people that he had. And I went out there and it's the seat of Silicon Valley. And I convinced the guy to sell me this platform, the software, everything that comes with it. But he had a very lofty Silicon Valley valuation, right?
Yeah.
Here's a guy with no sales. He's building this in a garage.
Yeah.
But he's in Silicon Valley where everything is, the valuation of companies is based on future potential, not current earnings.
Yeah.
So I found a guy who Blake Stovall. You may remember him.
Sure.
Blake was one of the original Reaper pilots in the Air Force, and he's the only guy that I knew that really understood autonomous systems and their application into the military.
And when you say Reaper pilots, are you talking about like drone pilot, like combat drone pilots, right?
Combat armed drones. So he was a B-52 bomber pilot in the Air Force. Also joined the military late, like I did. We were connected because he was an engineer at Boeing, and then after September 11th, joined the Air Force.
Yeah.
So he ended up flying bombers and then transitioned to the Reaper program, and those were the first armed Predator drones. So that when you started, this is the first time in history where we've had drones that could launch from the United States, fly overseas, engage a target, and come home.
Yeah.
One tank of gas. And so he was one of the first people to do that. And so I talked to him about this and said, who could we find to invest in this idea? And because I have virtually zero business experience.
Yeah.
No one's going to loan me money on my public affairs degree from LBJ school. But what are they going to loan money on? Well, maybe there's somebody who's idealistic as me, or somebody that has who has a vision that might want to participate in this with me, not as a silent investor, but as a true partner.
Yeah.
And learn how to do this. So, and that's where Martin UAV comes from. Reuben Martin out of Kilgore, Texas.
Yeah.
Went out and got the valuation way down because his checkbook was real. Mine was, not at the time.
Yeah.
And here we are. But it's taken, it took a long time to get it in that area. Taking a piece of technology like the VBAT, which is the name of our aircraft,
Yeah.
and taking it from where it was to a production aircraft is not an easy task.
Right.
The only way to do that is with a lot of money and a lot of forward thinking and investing in people.
Yeah.
So we went out and found the best people that we could find, that shared our belief, that understood that even though our product was in a very niche space,
Yeah.
there was nothing to fill those niches.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. It took about 4 years. I remember the third year in, so 2 years ago, our company was over $30 million in debt.
Yeah.
And we were not sure we were going to make it, even though we had some contracts and we knew we had the right platform. Our competitors are very few, but they're big companies: Boeing, L3, Lockheed Martin. And here we are, a small 60-person company. But we knew if we were persistent and we focused on the client's problem and not the grander lobby around the industrial defense behemoth in Washington, that eventually our product would solve enough problems where we would get the momentum. And that's what's happened. And so now VBAT is doing really, really, really well.
That is a phenomenal entrepreneurial lesson right there. They're in every business. I don't care whether it's a drone business or a law business or a coffee shop. There's always going to be bigger businesses you got to compete against, right? There's always going to be the 800-pound gorilla. And so a lot of people think, well, what am I going to do when Walmart moves into town? Am I just going to go out of business? And yeah, some people will go out of business, but if you can do what you're talking about, which is fulfill a need that customers actually have, like in some ways, a smaller business has some advantages over a bigger business because you can be more agile, you can be more nimble, you can be more in front of your customers. And so, like in my business, we've intentionally tried to stay pretty small, specifically because we want all the clients to be able to know their lawyers. Whereas at these big firms, you may never meet your lawyer the entire case. But anyway, that's a phenomenal entrepreneurial lesson.